Shout out today so that I don't have to worry about it tomorrow. Letting go and giving yourself grace. By the way, before I start, just letting everybody know I do peer counseling sessions. I do individual peer counseling sessions. So if you are interested in that, reach out to me. My email address, I'm pretty sure, is in my bio. But drop something in the comments. Let me know if you have an interest in working with me. I specialize in goal setting, working through anxiety and depression, and motivation. My counseling is not therapy. I do not diagnose anybody. And I work with people who are stable enough to receive those services. I can work with somebody while they're working with a psychotherapist or a psychiatrist, but my services are not a replacement for that. So if you have an interest, drop something in the comments or shoot me an email and we'll talk. The reason I'm saying that is because right after work, I jumped into my own business, which was the counseling, and I was speaking to one of my clients, and it was interesting because we were having a talk because we've been going through. This person was telling me that they have the tendency to get overwhelmed. And when they get overwhelmed, they tend to forget their tools that they have learned, their coping tools. And we've been talking about these coping tools. We've been working together about 6 months. And this person has talked to me about different scenarios that were happening 6 months ago and how they were responding to those scenarios. So I started to give suggestions. Next time you get into that scenario, try this. Or before it gets to the point where you reach that boiling point, try these different methods. These are some methods that have worked for me. These are some things that have helped me through the types of scenarios that you're talking about. And they said, you know what, Mark? I tried this. The next time I face this, I tried this thing that you mentioned, and it worked for me. And it's been working well. And weeks started to go by, and they were telling me, you know, all these different tools that you've been giving me have been working so well for me. And I'm thankful for that. Then 1 week comes along and they tell me, Mark, even though we've been doing all this work together, I faced a scenario that was familiar to me. I knew the tools that I should have used to get me through it, but I didn't use them. And I feel like some kind of failure. I don't know why I regressed like this. You know, I feel like I've taken some steps backwards. And my response to that was, we can learn all the coping tools that we want. We can learn all the skills that we want. We're also human. There are days where something might be too much for you. There are days where you might just wake up on the wrong side of the bed, and things that you could normally handle are now things that you have difficulty handling. I use an analogy of back in the day when I was doing piano competitions. My mom used to put me in all these piano competitions. And I remember I would be home or with my piano teacher practicing. I would take out these classical music pieces and I would practice them and I would practice them and I would practice them till my fingers hurt. And I would perfect them. Great, I got everything. I can hit all the notes without making mistakes. And then I got the dynamics. I know when to play mezzo forte. I know how to play, basically I know how to do the right dynamics, louder, softer. I know how to play different types of ways. Whatever it says in the song, basically I have it down to a T. And then I would get in these pressure scenarios where I'm now in a competition and I'm being judged. And I don't mean judge like people are sitting there judging me. I mean literally there are judges there giving me a score and giving everybody a score. And I'd get in that room and I'd feel so much pressure. I'd play the song. I'd make a mistake. And then I would say to myself, how could this happen? I've played this song 1,000 times without making a mistake. I'm so ready. I was so prepared for it. And then I would sit and ruminate over that mistake. And that feeling carried on into adulthood. It was something that I continued to do as an adult. Until I reached a point where I was finally able to say to myself, there's nothing that I can do to change the past. There's nothing that I can do. I can't jump in my time machine and reset that moment and play the song again and not make a mistake. I can hop on the piano at home and I can play the song without a mistake on my own piano, but does that make a difference to the competition? Absolutely not. The competition is done. Somebody won. I didn't win. And we go and we move on from there. A way that I have pushed past those kind of feelings as an adult is learning how to... You can still think about that moment without living in that moment. Now, there's a constructive way to think about it. You can go back and you can say, what might have led to me making that mistake? Was there something that I did wrong? Was there something on my mind that was distracting me when I got up there on that piano? Was it the anxiety that I felt when I looked out and saw the judges? What did I eat that morning? I mean, there's so many different things you can think of. At times, you could have done everything right, and you just had a momentary lapse of concentration or a slip, and that's what happened. You just made the mistake, and there's nothing really much you could do. You just go back to the drawing board. But the way that I look at it as, if I ever find myself in a comparable scenario, I'm just going to remember what it was like in this scenario and do whatever I can do to do better. But then I also use the scenario of Steph Curry. For anybody who watches the NBA, you don't even have to understand the NBA or watch the NBA to understand this analogy. Every shooter, Steph Curry is a shooter in the NBA, and every shooter goes through shooting slumps in the history of the NBA. Steph Curry has gone through his, and people consider him the greatest shooter of all time. Reggie Miller, Klay Thompson, any great shooter in the NBA that you can think of has had time periods where their shots are just not going in. And whenever they get in front of the media is like, why do you think your shot's not falling? And oftentimes they're like, I go through my same routine. I take 10,000 shots. I take 1,000 shots every day at the gym, let's say. And they're like, many of those shots go in. They're like, I do all my gym work. I put up my shots right before the game. I do my warm-ups. The shots are going in. The shots are going in. But then, for whatever reason, when the lights go on, the shot is no longer going in. So I remember this particular stretch that was, I think, 2 to 3 seasons ago, whenever they last won their championship, where he went through a real cold streak. He was real cold from the field. And they were asking him, what's going on with your shot? Are you worried now that you aren't going to be able to help your team in the big moments? Blah, 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 blah. He was like, nope. I always feel like the next shot's going to go in. When his slump was over, he started hitting big shots. And he hit huge shots that won them that championship. And they were like, well, Does it feel like redemption or something? That everybody was doubting you and you were missing all those shots? Sorry, there's so much pollen in the air. That you were missing all those shots and people were starting to doubt and question you. And now all of a sudden you hit these huge shots and you're standing here with your 4th championship. And his answer was simple. He was like, shoot or shoot. So he was basically saying, as a shooter, you have to have no conscience. Basketball is a perfect example of having to let go of your failures in real time. The type of failures that I'm talking about, it's more of like, I'm not going to get another piano competition tomorrow. Like, I just messed up in one today and I have another one in 5 minutes. But in basketball, it's like you miss 10 shots in a game. Then what happens if they give you the ball with the game on the line? Here's the thing with that. You are the closer. You're always the person who makes the game-winning shots. What are you going to do if during that game in particular, you go through some weird cold streak where you're normally missing, but the team depends on you to make the shot? Here's what you do. You take the shot, and this is why. You take the shot because you are good at those shots. You've made many of them before. You put in the time, you put in the practice, so you show confidence in your skills and what you've worked for. If you happen to if you've missed all 10 before and you miss shot number 11, you live to shoot another day. And if you make it and they interview afterwards, you just tell them, this is what I've done before. This is what I always expect to do. My confidence comes from my preparation. That's what Serena said one time. They asked her why she was so arrogant one time when she was in her prime. Because when they used to interview Serena Williams, she used to say, I expect to win every match. And when she would lose a match, she would say, congrats to that person who beat me. But it was more about what I didn't do than it was about what they did. And she was like, excuse me. She was like, I don't play to come in second place. And she said, my confidence comes from my preparation. I know I'm the best in the world because I prepare like I'm the best in the world. So I say all that to say, if you make a mistake on something that you are typically good at, something that you typically wouldn't make that mistake, give yourself the grace. Remember that you are still a human being, and human beings aren't perfect. Give yourself a sliding scale. There are going to be times when you know better, but you don't do better. There are going to be times where that thing that you've practiced and that thing that you've perfected, you find yourself in some scenario where you didn't do it as well as you could possibly do it, or you just flat out messed up. Learn from it. Don't stay in the past, and figure out what you could do next time to be better in the future. And that's it. Music and Mental Health signing off. Please make sure, comment, like, subscribe. I changed the order. And hit the notification bell, because I'm trying to boost myself back up in the algorithm. Working on it. Talk to y'all soon.